The purpose of the Global CFO Council is to provide an educational and networking forum for senior financial executives in order to share best practices, discuss current financial issues, and to learn about current topics related to the performance of their jobs. Membership is open to senior financial executives including CFOs, financial VPs, and treasurers. We hope that you'll become a member of the Global CFO Council today. To join, please visit the membership tab at globalcfocouncil.com.
I'm very excited to have Amy here today to discuss with us about AI and the practical applications of. I've got a little introduction for you, Amy. Some of this may or may not be true. Amy is the president at CMIT Solutions of Charleston, a managed service provider in Charleston, specializing in small and mid-sized firms, part of a national organization, CMIT. I think you guys have 250 or so branches or divisions or companies around the country. Expert in cybersecurity and IT consulting, computer networking, and AI. So perfect for Amy to be here. And on that subject, has recently written a book with some other co-authors about AI and maximizing business potential with AI. Great book. I'm sure we'll touch a little bit of that while we're talking. Before all that, Amy, it looks like you got your undergrad in mathematics and master's in systems engineering from Virginia and a graduate certificate in accounting from DeVry, because you have a very interesting background in both senior leadership roles in accounting and finance, but also senior leadership roles in IT, including VP, CIO type roles at Bell South, Windstream, Force Protection, Blackbaud, before starting and being El Presidente of CMIT. Very impressive. And a couple of interesting things I think I know about you. I think you're from Arlington, Virginia.
All right.
I think you're a dog lover, super lover.
Mm-hmm.
This is the only picture I've ever seen of you that you don't have a dog in your hands. The professional photographer probably made you put it down. And I think you're a big fan of water, being out on the water, concerts, ball games, and travel. That's what I seem to see. Boom. All right. Well, I'm very excited to have you here. Amy, I'm going to mute myself and be a participant here in your presentation. And then about halfway, hit you with a couple of questions. And then if we have time, hit you with a couple more questions at the end.
That sounds great. Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here and talking about one of my favorite topics of late. It's so interesting how AI has just supplanted all the discussions about cybersecurity. Those are still important, but it's such a hot topic that I've been, I would say most of my presentations are kind of moving in that direction. And I had a hard time trying to figure out which slides to focus on, but the intent of this is to kind of talk generally about AI, but then the things that CFOs need to think about too. So with that, this is just meant to be sort of a comprehensive overview and talking about some of the potential dangers and pitfalls and also some real world applications. So with AI, it used to be talked about, I'd say more in conceptual terms, and I don't think anyone anticipated just how rapidly it would become such a dominant topic in news. And it's just no longer science fiction. You know, it used to be that I think it was out there and everyone talked about it in terms of how it would be down the road. But now, understanding the foundations of AI, the capabilities, and the trajectory that we're on, I think is essential for us as business leaders and for just living in an AI-powered world. So this is a little bit of an overview of the evolution of AI. You may have heard back in 1943, I mean, just not to get too technical on this, but they had what was called a neural model. And the big thing about that is it really was the first concept of AI as a theory. So it was the idea that machines actually could mimic human thinking. So that's that's when it launched. And then you'll see quite a bit of activity through the next 2 decades. In 1956, AI was born at a Dartmouth conference, and AI was launched as an actual field. And there were really high expectations, which drove a lot of funding for it. But I think it also set expectations way too high for where computing power was at the time. In 1966, we saw, I don't know if you remember hearing about Eliza just in terms of historical concept, but it was an early chatbot. And it was able to give the illusion of intelligence, but it was really a rule-based app rather than critical thinking. And what happened is I think confidence waned when they saw the limitations of it and that it really wasn't able to just think like a human being. And because of that, we entered what's called the AI winter because funding dried up and got distracted on other things. But then, so we had about a 20-year dry spell. And then in the 80s, they started really some major breakthroughs, which enabled systems to begin learning from data. Then into the 90s, you'll see AI beating a chess champion, and on into the 2010 era where there were some pretty significant breakthroughs and rapid progress really ramped up. In 2017, we had something called the Transformers, and that was well, there was a movie called that too, but this is more of the foundation for modern AI, like ChatGPT. And it used a neural network architecture, meaning thinking like a human being, that allowed for processing a lot of data simultaneously. And that was key because it can synthesize all these different sentences at the same time and start to think, through logical scenarios. So instead of just being able to be a rule-based thing, we started into some critical thinking. So that was kind of interesting. So AI, they have had some rapid capability growth in recent years, and you can just see GPT 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the point here is really just the nonlinear scale of the growth in processing. And I'd say, current models just have so much better long-term context and memory to handle massive documents and projects. So that has changed quite a lot with some of the recent things. And I think we've all seen that as we go through ChatGPT and just continue to see the capabilities are just astounding. There has been really unprecedented adoption of ChatGPT. And this is kind of interesting because what this shows is the adoption rate in months for some of those well-known technologies in terms of how long it took each of them to get to 100 million users. So, ChatGPT just shattered records. It reached an astounding 100 million users in only 2 months. And that's compared to, Facebook, which we all kind of remember as just meteoric, but went to 60, it took 60 months, 5 years to get to that same time frame. And Netflix was at 10. So, just to give you an idea of context and just the rapid growth of it, it's been pretty darn crazy. You may hear different terms regarding AI. There's traditional AI and generative AI. And really kind of the big difference is that they have different goals. Traditional AI is more analyzing, predicting, and classifying information. So it relies heavily on very specific rules. And, examples of that are things like spam filters that are classifying emails as spam or not, fraud detection for banks where they're identifying anomalies. And it's very, you think kind of just it's going through a rule-based sequence. Then there's things like recommendation systems for Netflix or Amazon, or maybe image recognition software, and that is Somewhat of that is like self-driving cars, use that a lot, identifying stop signs. Then for generative AI, the difference there is that it's actually creating content. And so that's where ChatGPT or AI chatbots come in. It's generating text or answers to questions or even conversations. I mean, that's exciting, but also very frightening when you think about, it can react and create conversations that sound a lot like you, learn from you. There's also things like AI music tools where it's composing songs or generating just new different collaborations of songs in combination with other artists. And then, of course, there's code generation. So those two, you may hear those terms, but that's kind of what the difference is. One is rule-based, the other is content creation. And, the concept now, I think, is just that AI it's everywhere. It's every system we have pretty much has AI either in its application or in its foundation. And that, of course, is just going to continue to expand, I'd say rapidly over the next 5 to 10 years. But it really has become pretty much integral to most everything we do. And again, some real world examples of AI and just in daily life are, smart assistants. That's becoming more of a thing too, where, people are substituting some form of regular assistance for smart assistants. And, I think we'll continue to see some growth in that area, but, email and spam filters, organizing photos, that's become a big one where it can look at photos and recommend groupings for those and just kind of how that would, oops, sorry about that. Then you have, optimized navigation. I don't know how many of you have actually ridden in some of the cars, like the Waygos. I myself am not quite brave enough to get in one, but when I was in Phoenix, I mean, that was the thing. It was just bizarre to look at all these cars self-driving and getting from point A to point B. And, just real world context, I have a 92-year-old father that's in assisted living. And, we're kind of all thinking fast forward to the time when we're there. He can't get out and go anywhere unless someone can give him a ride. But that won't be a thing. We just sign out a car and go wherever we want to go. And then, of course, the online shopping suggestions. I'm sure we've all seen Amazon and how that's changed even quite recently. So there's AI in education and in the creative space too. And, you've got adaptive learning platforms. So that's getting more and more interesting, but, it can personalize the educational experience. And it does that by analyzing performance and then adjusting the content to the correct pace for that student. It can be smart enough to go back through areas where you might need some strength. I don't know how many of you have been, I'm a huge fan of some of the language learning apps and get up every morning and do my Duolingo in Spanish. Don't say anything to me because I'm not too good yet, but I'm getting there. But that's a good application. Then you've got creative co-creation as well, where AI is truly becoming a creative partner. And it'll be interesting to see how that inspires artists to do things maybe a little bit differently than they might have by incorporating areas of interest into their own music. So that, that's going to have a lot of application. And then, of course, professional design tools. It's changing the way that architects even think about design and all the different tools you have to prototype things much more quickly or to look at what if scenarios. And, I think you can probably demonstrate that to clients much more effectively than you could previously and get more buy-in more quickly. So I think that's been exciting to watch. So AI, we all, I think one thing that I hear repeatedly when I go do presentations is that people are a little bit daunted about how to get into AI. And they're like, well, we're not using it yet. Well, yes, you are, because it truly is inside, so many things that we do already. It's embedded in the Microsoft applications, various CRM platforms. Many of the accounting platforms are either heavily using it or very shortly will be. One good and bad thing is that employees are experimenting independently. That you definitely need to think about. We'll touch on policies in a bit, but that's something that everyone needs to pay a lot of attention to. And then you've got vendors that are auto-enabling AI features. So you want to be asking questions regarding that as well, how it's used, what risks there are, what risk mitigations are there. And so governance is becoming a big risk factor, and a financial issue. So CFOs really, really need to take action and make sure you've got a plan to roll this out safely, smartly, and to take the maximum advantage of it. Now, here are just some examples of where mid-market CFOs are gaining some more immediate value from AI. And, many of you may be doing this. I'd be kind of interested in some stories, but board reporting and variance analysis is super helpful. Scenario modeling, we've got a lot of capabilities for improved forecasting accuracy, automated account reconciliations, even having it generate narratives for board decks based on, the content that you've created. Reporting cycles are certainly getting shorter than they had been because of some of these tools. Summarizing contracts, you have to be careful there about how you're ingesting contracts into AI, but it can be a very helpful tool. Policy drafting is a big one as well. And then, I think real-time fraud and anomaly detection and all of the cyber tools that are utilizing AI to detect patterns and things is getting much more, prevalent. But it's, we just need to stop thinking about AI as an IT project and think about it as a margin lever and start rolling it out. This is just a kind of small simplistic example, but for an $85 million manufacturing company that had a 5-person finance team, previous to AI, close cycle was 12 days, and they implemented AI assisted variance and automation reporting and able to close the cycle to 9 days, which is 25% faster. So just, a simple example of just using average salary of $120,000 annual productivity value being unlocked from the AI implementation. This case study and it's kind of generic because it pulled from several different examples, but it's a 300-employee company providing customer support to e-commerce brands. And I'm sure we can all think of, many different e-commerce customer support that we've been on and how they've changed. I know the Amazon one has changed pretty drastically even in the last 6 months, but before AI, all of the customer support interaction would have been handled by a human agent, and tickets came in either via chat or via email, and then the agent had to manually read them all, respond, and potentially categorize, classify them once they're done, just for patterns and things for back office. Now, the problems with this are, the responses were often much slower, which can cause lack of purchasing. People get distracted. 12 to 24 hours on average. Obviously, higher labor costs needed to support a larger team. And then you'd have a lot of inconsistencies in the answers between various customer support agents too. People are coming up with different responses, and then it's hard to scale up or down as needed, so that busy seasons can be a bit more of a challenge. And after AI, You've got the AI chatbot for the first line of support, and it is also doing ticket classification and routing. So it may be routing things to a human being where it needs to. And then I don't know about you, but these are also getting better, because the first AI ones where you're just like 0, 0, speak to a human being, 0. It's getting a little better, so that I think is a little less frustrating than it used to be. But after the AI implementation, they had suggested replies even for the human agents, which they can do more quickly. They can push something for suggested responses. And I think that way their workflow changed a bit to allow answers to simple questions very instantly. And, especially on things like order status or returns. And that left complex issues getting routed to human beings. So the agents are using AI suggested responses to reply faster, but you're not necessarily supplanting people in this case. But the ramifications of this are that, the response times reduced substantially. So, you start cutting those in half, and you can see what it does to support costs. So you've got support costs down 30%, ticket volumes for humans are reduced by 50%, and your customer satisfaction goes way up because they're getting more accurate, more directed, faster responses, and are able to move on without frustration. So why this worked so well is it just they focused on the high volume repetitive tasks. They didn't replace the human being. So this isn't about a workforce reduction thing. It's about trying to use the people that you have more effectively and augment their tools. And, there's a clear ROI here, definitely faster service and lower costs. So again, AI can handle the repetitive questions so the human beings on the team can focus on either more strategic things or more complicated questions. So that, Robert, I think you wanted a pause point for.
Yes, I've got a couple questions for you. One is, and maybe these case studies are an example or just sort of a general answer, is you talk a little bit about data readiness in preparation for AI initiatives for, say, have a bot answer questions about accounting or customer service questions. It has to have a repository of data, easily indexed. To get good answers, you got to have good data. Could you talk a little bit about data readiness as a company's thinking about beginning an AI journey? How important is data and location and indexing it?
It is actually extremely important for several things. I mean, we went to a convention, our annual CMIT convention, at which there are actually now 300 locations for us. But we had one funny, not funny presentation on the risks of AI. And like one area people are having a lot of success, or examples are, you take your policies and procedures or your HR manual, and you use the Copilot agent to analyze that information, and employees can query that. That's actually one of the top applications for getting something effective that quickly reduces human resources needs. But obviously, having accurate data to give accurate information is important. In this funny example I was talking about, in this one particular company, they pulled in some of their team's dialogue. And as you can imagine, my team is guilty of the same thing. Their team members are chatting back and forth against each other saying, oh, well, tell this particular person that, this was an example, not my team, tell this particular example not to be such a moron, or something like that. And the AI agent actually made that recommendation, not quite in those terms, but so it is important to make sure that you review the data, you clean the data, you make it efficiently accessible so you don't have a lot of either things that are contradicting each other or repetitive information that gets confusing with slightly different nuances.
Amy, one of the maybe prerequisites for initiating AI, like any change management, some of the best ideas come from the troops, the folks right, the closest to the client, the closest to the customer, the closest to the product. And I don't think AI is any different. But some employees, there was a season where AI was bad. Like you got in trouble for using AI in school, like
Right.
I know my son he just graduated from Clemson. And a little story, his freshman year, the teachers all told him, if you use AI, you will be walked out of school. You will be in trouble for using the tool. When he his senior year, every instructor said, and he's a computer science major, you have to use AI. If you do not use AI, you will be kicked out of school. Like he's right in the middle of that. Use it and you're in trouble, and then by the time he graduated, don't use it and you're in trouble. But I think some people have a kind of a like, am I supposed to be? Can I use this? And so talk to me a little bit about the how to get the team to come up with ideas and to familiarize themselves with the art of the possible. Hey, it's not bad. Like that, like the basic level,
That,
getting people
that's
engaged, trained in idea generation.
that is an actual excellent point. And there's two things that I would recommend there. One is you need to have a policy. You need to have an AI policy that says, and we have a couple of very basic, we have some super simple ones that are easy to adopt and some ones that are meant for larger market um, companies that are a little bit more complicated. But I think having a policy that clearly articulates what they are and are not allowed to do with AI, what data they're allowed to ingest, how they can use it, which tools they can use, and what may or may not go into AI. Social security numbers, some of the stuff is so obvious, but we see things that we're just like, oh my gosh, you know, because once you put stuff out in the public domain, it's out there and there's no cleaning it back. Now, the other thing that's been very successful for companies is to have an AI committee. Now, that committee can meet, on some kind of regular basis, but if you have a committee and you explain to that committee that our goal is not to replace people, it's to use the people that we have more effectively. And we want to start rolling out AI to make everyone's lives easier. We want to incorporate ideas from all the departments, prioritize those, and have some effective wins up front to get some buy-in. I think that turns out to be very effective. And you get employees excited about AI rather than intimidated or scared that their job is on the chopping block.
Ooh, I like that. I heard somebody talk about a 10x impact it could have. I love what you're saying, Amy, that what we could sell it as, it's the 10x increase in revenue, not a
Right.
10x reduction in headcount.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that. Uh, One more, Amy, is on the flip side, I have a few like leading technologists within the organization, and they get all the vendor emails. I kind of think it's like vendor hype sometimes. I mean, some of these promises of the world will change if you buy my software, if you use me as an AI consultant. How do you balance maybe some vendor hype with what's real and what's possible right now with especially small and mid-size companies that have all the teams we just talked about? They're going to be cross-functional people's day job they already have, and these are going to be like part-time. How do we navigate the hype versus
Well,
what's real and possible right now?
being able to estimate the savings and doing an actual ROI on a project, and also on your initial projects, making sure you're going back and calculating, what was the actual return. because it is the case that, like there's some companies that say, yeah, we can use a chatbot, or a co-pilot agent to automate this, but we're going to spend $200,000 to save 20. So I think there is a lot of validity to your concern that you have to figure out, where the most probable wins are, and what tools can be used without a lot of custom programming.
Oh, that's good. I've got some other questions that folks have submitted either in the chat or sent me emails and texts. I should have never given people my cell phone number, but I'm going to hold until the end. That was awesome, and I'll mute myself and hit you with a few questions at the end.
Okay. So in terms of the competitive reality, AI is compressing cost structures, and that's of course a good thing. It's accelerating decision cycles, and I think it's reshaping expectations. I think it's a true statement that all of us as CFOs and leaders need to adopt AI in whatever form makes the most financial sense for our particular companies, but it is a true statement that the deliberate adopters are going to outperform those who are not implementing it at all. And I think this goes back to your question, Robert, too, about how CFOs should evaluate AI tools. I mean, you have to really think about, by implementing this, is it going to improve either margin or productivity? Is it going to reduce either financial or compliance risk? And within the tool, is governance and auditability already built in, or do you need to compensate for that and add something into the process? And then I think looking at the ROI, can it be measured within a 6 to 12 month window? We're looking for quick wins and things that kind of accelerate things quickly, because AI is changing so fast that I think you want to be thinking about some shorter wins. And I've got a laundry list here, and I'm not planning on going through all of these, but it might just be a useful thing to look at later, because you'll have heard of many of these different tools. But for some of the finance and accounting, and some of these I'm more familiar with than others, but I was just putting together a good laundry list of those we've come across for finance and accounting, or forecasting and scenario planning. I think contract and vendor risk AI is something where there've been a fair amount of traction for those people that are looking at large contracts regularly, because it can do a pretty good job of summarizing things. For business intelligence and analytics, their Tableau and some of the AI insights are interesting. If Power BI is huge, people are doing a lot more with that, including the ability to integrate all the co-pilot information into it. Fraud detection and cybersecurity, the tools there are getting so much more sophisticated, which is important because all the crooks and AI stuff is getting that much more sophisticated. So it's, a constant balancing act there. But our tools in particular, we continue to see our vendors rolling out more AI and things that are catching threats. So that's very, very comforting to see. And then there's a lot of governance and data protection tools as well. Microsoft Purview, Google's rolling out quite a lot of tools. There's audit logging and other tools that are helpful from a governance standpoint. And then I think some of the ones that people are more familiar with, the enterprise AI assistants, you've got Claude, or I know my team is big proponents of Claude. They're talking about how they've been checking that out and some of the capabilities there. Copilot, we're seeing a lot of adoption of that. ChatGPT obviously is a good one. One that you may not hear about that much, but that we do resell and people like, is one called Hats. And it is something that's an affordable subscription-based model, but that pulls in the various tools. So you can use ChatGPT for one thing, it incorporates Claude for others. So you can kind of use it where, because each of those are sort of better at different aspects of assistant work. So, oops, did I skip one? So as mentioned, there's a lot of risks and challenges that are coming along with AI. And I think just can't emphasize enough that we need careful management there. And I think understanding those challenges is crucial for rolling this out in a smart and responsible way. I do have a checklist that I can share later, but it's something that just to run through for you guys to ask yourself some pretty good questions. I can maybe bring that up quickly at the end to assess your own risk levels. We're doing that as we meet with our clients on our regular business reviews. This is the checklist I was referencing. So it's just got some high level things that you can run through and ask your finance team, internal controls, your vendor risk, making sure you're quizzing them about, how they're using it as well. From your audit perspective, you want to be able to explain how you're using AI to your auditors. That's going to come up more and more. And forecasting and decision risk, you've got to have everything verified and assumptions all validated. So I think, this is just a basic thing. We'll have it available from a link on our website. Documentation, you've got to make sure that there's traceability of things and that you've got some ownership and guidance there. So for global collaboration, you're going to see a lot more, I think, overall policies and collaboration across the world. If you can, this went to anyway. But there are over 30 countries now that are engaged in just a collaborative approach to AI risk and research and sharing findings and coordinating approaches to all the different challenges. I think is going to continue to be a hot topic of any international forum that we see. And there's so much cutting edge research going on. Just, every month we're rolling out some new exciting discovery, but I think we'll see a lot more risk mitigation too. So if we can go to the governing, so effective AI governance is going to be, more and more critical, but I think we should, can you flip to the slide on the 4 risks that CFOs need to govern, slide 20? So data leakage is a big concern. And, that's obviously where people are putting information out there that you really do not want to get exposed out in the world. So, when people are using standard ChatGPT without the subscription or, like some of the tools will keep your data local, but allow you to search across the global index. But people are putting, things out there that are having intellectual property get exposed, having key contracts or pricing or things like that. So you really want to have a handle on how your employees are using it and what kind of oversight is appropriate to have in place. You don't want any of your employees using tools without company approval. So I think you need to have a laundry, list of these are the tools that you are allowed to use, and these are the tools that you are not allowed to use for company purposes. And you're going to want to do regular assessments because everything is changing so rapidly. You want to have a gap assessment, just like you've been doing with cybersecurity risk assessments. So this takes a bit of a different twist and looking at where you might have exposure and what tools or processes you need to put in place for that. And then lastly, your vendor exposure is a big problem. So you need to make sure, that part of their SOC 2 compliance and some of the other certifications they go through, but it's a good idea as you meet with vendors to ask them, how are you using AI? What risk might you be putting us into by the way your tools are structured? Okay. So for CFO risk assessment questions, do your employees know which AI tools are approved? I mean, this is just a good basic list for you guys to be thinking about. Are teams restricted from entering sensitive data? I just mentioned that, but into public AI tools. And if you're using AI generated content for financial reporting, that's great, but you need to make sure there is a review process to have that always reviewed by a human being. And again, meeting with your vendors on privacy and data usage, we all get about 1 million of those. Here's our privacy statements. But I think having a real conversation with them about their current path and future and what they're doing for risk mitigation. And then lastly, can you explain to your audit team where AI is used in finance? I think that's, if you answer no to or even not sure to any of theirs, there's usually, I think, enough indication that you probably want to do a full risk assessment. So for the path forward, a good just basic framework for an adoption path is to get a handle around what you're doing currently. So look at your current AI usage. Maybe you want to poll your teams, put that the committee together that I was talking about and task them with getting with their own teams for how are they using it. And it's a good baseline to have that as well, so that 12 months from now, you can get back together and say, okay, let's look at how things have changed and just be able to, get a comparison of some of the exciting things that you've done too. And an approval process for enterprise AI tools. Want to actually, evaluate some of the different ones and make selections and make sure everyone's clear on which ones are available to use. Maybe you pick a pilot case for one high ROI use case and roll that out so you can get some wins, show it to your leadership team, and be able to demonstrate the value. That also, as I mentioned previously, gets employees engaged and excited about the possibilities. It's a good idea also, maybe you share wins across your industry of other people that are adopting so that, they see it's kind of, something that's part of your business strategy and the way you're rolling it out. And then lastly, you want to have a formalized governance and monitoring process. So that needs to be, I think, also structured and documented. And, I used to be heavily engaged in SOX and have stepped away from that a bit, but this would be all incorporated into that process as well. So looking ahead, I think, most of us kind of think that it's going to change just at such a crazily accelerated rate that it's going to be hard to see exactly how it impacts things. But I think back on the day when I worked in telecom, and I remember I worked for an independent telephone company, and we had, everybody had a landline, and I remember sitting at the board meeting where we were talking about cell phones. Oh, they'll never replace landlines, people were saying. That'll never happen. And of course, fast forward a number of years, it went crazy. So I think that, that's going to be a very different world 10 years from now. So just in conclusion, I think shaping AI for the common good, this comes across businesses. It comes, hits us in our personal lives, in our fitness lives, in our, creative lives, things that we're doing, even art. I love to paint. There's a lot of AI tools that can take a painting as it exists right now, and it can give you some ideas on what to do next with it. I mean, it's just the adoption of how it's going to play out is just going to be absolutely mind-numbing. But we all have a collective responsibility to make sure that gets done ethically and responsibly and safely. And so I think, it comes down for a call to action of just asking all of you to, start putting in place those procedures, get going on it. Don't be afraid to jump in. Just jump into the pool and try one.
I want to hit you with a couple of questions. That was fantastic. I've got a bunch, some my own, and then some from the chat and text and email. So I'm going to hit you rapid fire, like 10 questions in 10 minutes. So one is, when you were talking about training and talent readiness, what are some ways you can support the team in training and like building up the finance and accounting, the risk team, whatever areas we support, so they can kind of be ready for this AI journey?
There's several different training things. Microsoft offers quite a number of training things on their Copilot or other tools, and those we've seen some pretty good success with those too. But I would, I think your IT group as well often has some resources, but the vendors are good options for that as well, because many of them have within, for their own platform of how to use the AI aspect within it. So, I think the combination of those would be helpful.
Question two, we got this cross-functional AI digital transformation team, and they get ideas, and some of these are quick wins, small projects, some of them are kind of big projects. How should we think about small quick win projects versus big projects? Where do we start? Do you start with the big? Do you start with the small? What are your thoughts about picking and prioritizing the ideas that are submitted?
Well, having been kind of in operational excellence and change management, I mean, my recommendation is always to start with a few quick wins to get engagement, but you could probably go about it from both at the same time. So have some quick wins running in tangent with a longer term big ROI of something that is, would just be fundamentally transformational to the business. But getting those quick wins done, I think, to get some excitement and momentum would be very important.
You mentioned Duolingo and how you love that tool. It made me think the disruption that's going on because of AI. I have a friend of a friend I know who many years ago started a translation company. She turned it into a $10 million business, translation services for businesses. And she is getting annihilated the past 5 years because of AI is doing for free what she was doing for a fee.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, there's other industries. Everything we just said, it's so cool about doing, whether it's software, you could be a software company, but could I build that internally for something I'm paying someone for? It's graphics, it's engineer, it's accounting services. What do you think about the disruption it's having to different industries, different jobs? Wanted to kind of pull that out a little bit from you. Do you see any particular industries being disrupted the most?
Well, I actually had a slide on that is kind of interesting, but, coders, some aspects of coding is getting absolutely decimated because there are there are AI tools to do what it would take, a programmer to do. I think finance and accounting is hit, but it's changing. So people are going to use the AI tools, which will maybe you use some of the skill sets will change. You might need less data gathering people and preparing, but you'll have people that are actually able to think strategically more. Medical is actually an area where they're saying there could be quite a bit of growth, although, tools and things will shorten decision making and could compress things a little bit. But apparently, I'm not actually was surprised to see that's an area where they expect some growth. So I think it'll be there's going to be quite a lot of change.
You mentioned shadow use of AI, that in some areas it's already happening. And I have a funny story. We had to give all our board members access to our corporate chat GPT instance because they were uploading our entire package, a couple of them, not just one of them. And so talk a little bit more about that. That's important, right? Where you might want to be saving some money, but people are using AI. If it's free, they're just taking your data. It could be executives and board members who are using AI.
Yeah, they're not thinking about it, and they're taking the free chat GPT or other. I keep using that one as an example just because it's one of the more popular ones. But we've definitely seen cases where people copy a contract and ingest it into chat GPT and try to compare it to others, and then that's all of a sudden out there. We see social security numbers getting out there, credit card information, stuff that you just wouldn't even think people would do. But from a business standpoint, it might be some of your creative content or your logos and marketing things. So making sure that you have clear policy on what people can paste into tools, but having a company-owned tool that keeps your information local, I think is super important.
I read an article recently, this is going to be a legal thing, but that you, in certain circumstances, you could be waiving or losing your confidentiality or waiving privilege as a client if you just take information on your case and upload it to chat, free or paid versions of chat GPT, especially free versions, because there's no assumed confidentiality or privacy.
Expectation of privacy.
Yeah, and I thought, ooh, that's interesting. Like, if you're asked in a deposition, have you shared information? You're like, oh, all I did is upload everything my attorney's ever said and my entire package, and I started asking free Chatty G what to do. You could be waiving privilege and confidentiality.
It's similar to you need to ask your employee if you would put this in an email and say, email my entire address book, this information. Would you do that? If the answer to that is no, don't put it in there. Because
I love it. And I'm hitting you. I know you feel like this is an interrogation, but I hit rapid fire.
it's fun. I'm good.
How about budgeting? So in a month or two, depending on fiscal years, we'll start about thinking strategic and then business plans, then budgeting. And how should we be thinking about making investments? This isn't free, either in these cross-functional committees or in micro investments or macro investments or golly gee whiz, every software package is adding an AI module and they want to charge me for it. So how do we think about budgeting for these investments for next year?
Gosh, that has been so all over the map because I think it depends on the size of the company. But I mean, we're seeing some clients targeting like 10% of sales as an AI strategy number, which is, obviously a huge number, but that's, I think, the way the world is going, at least, even if it's not as much as that number, that's probably something you need to put some thought to as
Yeah,
to,
it's good to think of the scale, right? That it's probably not zero, and you're not a big baller if you're thinking a 0.5% of
yeah,
profit.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't like that number, by the way. That sounds like a lot, but
Right.
fair enough. I'm like,
I think that depends on the industry though,
I
too.
might, I might cut that part out of the video. How about ROI? So you talked about the presentation. This is what kind of, maybe this will be the last question. You led with this, is that it's important for people to have a business case. What's the business value? What's the ROI? You're like the perfect combination of a technologist with a finance and accounting background. A lot of people don't have that, Amy. You're like one of
Well,
one. So how do
well,
we,
I would turn that around to you actually. What would you think if you said pick an ROI where I would say this was extremely successful? What would you think that number needed to be?
well, I think it depends on like your weighted average cost of capital, but I think
Mm.
like the general number of like 10 to 20% of expected ROI, I think is like a minimum. Um, and I like would literally sit down and identify like, okay, what are the investment costs and what are the expected free cash flows, discount the free cash flows for the time value of money and see if it's a positive or negative number. And I would use like a big discount rate because I think sales and marketing and IT people make stuff up and they can't do math. That's why they ended up in sales and marketing. And so I use a huge cost of capital, huge discount
Yeah.
rate because I
And I
think,
think that's why the tracking is going to be so important because you need to be looking back and saying, okay, was this as successful as we thought it would be so that you can adjust on your future initiatives too.
Amy, I love it. That happens so fast, 60 minutes like that. Great actionable information. I love that. Go for quick wins, audit the success and failure, right? You said certainly celebrate the success, but audit and learn from any of the failures, how important that is, and even celebrate some of the failures that you failed fast and you failed forward. I noticed you didn't say like, and then beat them over the head with a mallet. No, you just audit to communicate, to learn. I love that. Um, I got a practical thing for you. Every one of your boards are taking your financial deck and sending it into Chat GPT. The guy on the HR committee doesn't understand accounting, so he's saying, read this board deck that Robert put together and give me 3 questions to ask him. I know he does it. I do that. I get the 3 questions he's going to ask me. I come up with good answers. And then when he asks them in the board meeting, I go, oh, that's such a good question. And then boom, answer his questions. He thinks I'm a genius because I'm always prepared for his questions, but I know what he's doing.
Oh,
Um, I love your audit documentation. I didn't even think about that. I've got some AI automation going in accounting. I know that's going to be in the checklist next year, and I have written nothing. I've written nothing. So thank you. I need to work on that. Vendors using AI. I probably need to add that to my new vendor setup as a checklist, just not like I need the COI. I need to know what are your policies on my data and information. Written corporate AI policy, love that. And then modeling the behavior we expect of others. We all should be using it and sharing wins. Um, I'm going to share, Amy, I'm going to share your ebook that you referenced. I'm going to share that AI checklist. That's awesome. I'm going to share a link to your book. Your chapter in that AI book is awesome. And guys and gals, read the ebook, read the checklist, read Amy's chapter. It takes 10, 20 minutes. What a perfect um, core foundation for meeting with the CTO and the CEO and planning for next year. Don't get behind. So, Amy, this was awesome. Thank you for this tangible stuff and these great takeaways. Thank you very much.
thank you.